Hello, welcome to In Discussion with ACEC, the podcast where policy meets practice and big ideas shape the infrastructure that supports our daily lives. I'm your host, John Gamble, President and CEO of the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies. In each episode, I sit down with leaders and decision makers from government, industry, and other stakeholders to explore issues driving Canada's infrastructure agenda, from economic growth and public policy to the future of the consulting engineering sector. This podcast is for anyone who wants a deeper understanding of how infrastructure decisions are made, why they matter, and what's coming next. Whether you're a professional in the built and natural environment, a policymaker, or simply interested in how smart infrastructure supports a strong economy and resilient communities, In Discussion with ACEC delivers through thoughtful conversations, real insights, and informed perspectives that you will not hear anywhere else. On this episode, I'm joined by Rodrigue Gilbert, the president of the Canadian Construction Association. Thank you, Rod, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's very good.
Yeah, we just don't get to talk about infrastructure enough, do we? Before we start sort of prognosticating, let's talk a little bit about the sort of the state of play right now for infrastructure. How would you assess the current state of our infrastructure and the attention it's currently receiving?
Well, I think you just need to go just driving here today, like you realize that the state of our infrastructure is in really, really bad shape. And that's true everywhere in Canada. That's true a bit everywhere in the world. I think it's the new trend to wanted to taking care of it. That being said, like I think for the first time in a long time, I feel we have a federal government that is willing to take the necessary step to take care of it. It's the first time, and you and I talk about that like every chance that we get. It's the first time that we feel that with Prime Minister Carney as a Prime Minister, they're really willing to work with us and make it better. But it's going to take time, and there's different things that they need to do, mostly talking to us, your industry and my industry, to make sure that we fill that gap. But I'm fairly more optimistic right now in the last year than I was the entire 10 years prior to that, that we will be addressing that issues.
Yeah. Well, you and I remember when we'd be on pins and needles every budget, will there be any infrastructure money? And I guess we're starting to see that continuity. The other thing that's crept into the narrative that we had not heard until recently is about major projects, resource infrastructure. And the other little nuance is that a lot of it's been sort of tied around housing. The government's sort of made that a brand. As long as it doesn't become a distraction, it could potentially be helpful because it really drives home how infrastructure turns a box into a home.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. So you don't build these houses without infrastructure. That's just simple as that. We have tons of examples everywhere in Canada. You and I will be at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities this week to talk about that, and that's part of the problem. I know government housing is an issue, and we see it every day. There's people in the street right now. They don't have houses. They cannot afford houses. They cannot live anywhere, so we have to address it. But that being said, John, as you know, none of that will be built without the infrastructure that we need, and the focus needs to be first on that. Alignment will be important. As you know, Fed, provinces, municipalities. You've seen yesterday the Quebec government and the Feds had a $10 billion agreement. Part of it was including like infrastructure that you need in order to support development of housing. So I think we see a trend where we're going to get there, but we're not to the finish line yet. So we still need to work on that.
Yeah, and we need a wider field of vision because it's not just water coming out of the tap in the home. It's not just being able to turn on the lights. You need it. People need the ability to get from their home to daycare, from home to school, from home to jobs, to the supermarket. We need that connectivity as well, and we need to make sure that with the understandable concern with the housing stock, there's a larger ecosystem that needs to be supported through infrastructure.
That's correct. And you remember a few years back when Minister Guilbeault, which just resigned from, is going to resign now this summer, said we don't need more roads, more street in Canada. Like, we need to connect these collectivities. We need to connect these communities. And we need to make sure that all these people talk to each other to bring that level of infrastructure that we need. And you're right, like we have projects right now that are stopped, not because they're not being built. They are built. They just don't have energy. In a country where energy for us should not be that complicated.
Yeah, and the other, now that we're sort of seeing the shift, Now we've got to adjust, our clients have to adjust, and the regulatory system has to adjust. How do you feel about our momentum versus the pressure that's going to be on the system to deliver these laudable but ambitious goals?
First of all, the momentum is there. So for your industry, my industry, the architects, everyone involved in the bigger construction industry, I think the momentum is there. If it's planned, financed correctly, I think the pressure, we can handle the pressure. I think if everyone's talking to each other, if we don't play politics with infrastructure in the next 10 years, I think the industry will be able to support the pressure and make it bigger. As you know what, for me, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on that one, is like the pressure, it's only starting. Our infrastructure is such in a bad shape right now that the first 10 years that the government's investing in, it's only the first step of many, if you ask me.
Yeah, and we're going to have to manage both our human resources and our technological resources and our financial resources to meet the demand. And that requires a somewhat predictable pipeline, but it also requires some building blocks to be there. And we saw some very positive things in the spring economic update about the trades. From our perspective, we're a little concerned about the stream of professional engineers, architects, natural scientists, quantity surveys, land surveyors, planners. And I know a lot of these professions also work in your industry. Are you feeling pressure on that side?
We do. I think the government is acknowledging that we will need more people to work on our project, which is fine. The only issue that we face first of all, it was positive announcement. We feel that the money going toward trades are good news. But we need to remember, construction industry, it's way more than the red seal trades. We need them. We need all of them and more. But it's so much bigger. All the civil sector was not covered in that announcement. And God knows that we need all these people that are working outside the red seal. Also, a lot of money is directed towards only unionized training, where, as you know, only 30% of our workforce is unionized, 70% if open shop. We need all these people to work on our project now, including all what you mentioned, and we need to put more money towards these that section of the workforce.
Well, that's right. When people drive past a job site, they see the carpenters, they see the welders, they see the fitters, but there's a lot of things that happen that are less obvious long before a shovel ever goes in the ground and long after. And the whole supply chain and the talent required, it's only as strong as the weakest link.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And this is why we all need to work together to attract all these people. We spent a lot of time at CCA the last few years trying to change the perception, working on the pipeline of workers, working with government, even like we've not talked about it, but all that immigration stream that we could be using to bring people that you need and we need to build all these projects. We're still not there yet. There's a lot more work to do on that.
Yeah, and that's so important. And then there's also the physical supply chains too, and we've seen the challenge with that in recent years. So as much as we have the political will, we have the recognition of the issue, there are some stormy clouds we're going to have to navigate through.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the trade war that is happening right now with the U.S., sometimes Canadian and even in our industry, we forgot how much integrated that we are with the U.S., and we've been for years. And to be honest, it served us very well for many years. Now we're in a different situation. And as we're building all these things, including all that money going towards national defense, that housing issues, all the housing infrastructure that we'll need, we will have to build a better supply chain within Canada, and making sure that every policy that the government is bringing forward, including the Buy Canadian, you have now a Buy Ontario, you have sometimes kind of a Buy BC, like all these policies, we need to do, and don't get me wrong, we're all Canadian, we're all supporting the policy. We should have worked on that supply chain like 20, 30, 45 years ago, but we did not. Now we need to be careful not to create a hurdle, but to remove hurdle in order for us to build what we need.
Yeah, I think a lot of the well-intended public policy to address the trade war and some other financial and other pressures has been well-intended, but perhaps it needs, maybe we need a fine screwdriver instead of a mallet.
And I agree with that. I think sometimes policy, they are what I call like good boardroom policy. We're all sitting around the table, and we want to do well. We want to try to fix some of the issues, making sure Canadians are part of the industry, and we believe in that too. But sometimes these policies are hurting what we're trying to do, and we just don't have time to waste.
Yeah, I think it has to be an all-of-government approach. We have to be synchronized, all-of-province approach, and that talks about our immigration. There were some immigration changes to take the pressure off of housing, but paradoxically, it's limited our access to foreign-trained talent. It's impacted the post-secondary sector, who rely on foreign-trained students to not only what they bring to the table, but they are economically important to the post-secondary school system.
No, you are correct. And again, it's about planning. Right. Like, you cannot move from 500,000 new Canadian to almost nothing, then next year maybe 200. Like, at one point, put a number there, work with us, work with the industry, not only ours, like restaurant, mining, the software industry, like forestry, like all these industry needs people. So why don't we all work together, put a number forward, just say, okay, maybe we need 400,000 new Canadian next year, and then 10 next year. And at least we can plan. We can work with it. We can address our program and new plan for our infrastructure better. Like sometimes when you plan, we've been asking for years, like 25 years infrastructure plan, and I did part of it. I think more and more politicians are on board with that. Why are we not aligning the workforce, immigration, the training? All this should be in the bigger plan. And it would be so much easier for us to plan.
Yeah, there's huge opportunities here. I agree. I think the public policy we're seeing now is directionally right, but there's some fine-tuning and perhaps a few gaps to still be filled. But let's be generous, consider it a work in progress. And I know we're both very anxious to work with all levels of government to ensure that we have this all hands on deck approach.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to give Prime Minister Carney some credits because they've been very engaged with all type of industry. They're very engaged with the defense industry, with like your industry, my industry. I think at the public servant level also, I think we feel that they're willing to work with us. But still, a lot of policy decisions are made without us in the room. I don't think it's bad will there. I think it's more it's practice. Like they need to have the reflex. They need to have the idea to call us on some stuff. I think bigger decision they call us, but sometimes we learn policy decision. Like I first heard like the Buy Canadian policy from like basically my neighbor in my street. Say, Rod, were you aware that they're working on that policy and that's going to have an effect on your industry? I said, oh, that's news to me. So then I reach out and then we work with them. But I think all these little tweaking they're trying to do, they should ask our industry and your industry about it.
We have a lot of knowledge, and we want them to be successful.
Yes.
And you know what? And the other thing, this is not unique to any one government, any level of government, but we don't have an expectation you get everything 100% right out of the door. Let's get it out there. Let's have a talk about it. Let's course adjust. Let's make it work. Because we're all vested in this. We all want a successful outcome.
No, absolutely. That's for us. Like, I always say that to my members. And they don't always like it, but don't let perfection be in the way of better. Like let's try stuff. Let's try to change little things, make it better quickly. We're never gonna get perfect. They will never be perfect. So at least let's just a little bit every day. Make sure that when Canadian goes out and they use the infrastructure that we built together, they're happy about it and they're proud of it.
Well, sometimes an imperfect decision is better than no decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's. I want to make sure we talk about some of the barriers though we do face, even if we get this all right. And maybe there's some public policy solutions. Some of it is just behaviors, but risk and procurement. The new check in the mail has become, we'll allocate the risk to the party best able to manage it, which in practice is often, not every case, but has often become, let's give the risk to anybody but me.
Yeah.
And that's not productive. I believe that we want projects to move forward. If you want the investment environment that the Prime Minister wants and the rest of us want, I won't say certainty because there's no certainty in business. Risk-free investment's an oxymoron, but we want predictability. we want to be able to make informed business decisions. What are some of the things you think we can do to help sort of create a better risk profile that makes investing in projects more attractive and makes participation of our members in these projects more attractive?
So first of all, you need to make sure that transparency. You need to make sure when you move forward with different project and investment, it's clear what you're trying to achieve, and don't change the rule in the middle of the project. Like we've seen that, like the last 10 years, we've seen that how many times, John, like where they were launching project and then midways there was something happening. It was often political, and then they changed the rules. And then the project just didn't make any sense anymore. So you need to make sure that when you take it, and you're absolutely right, when you take a decision, maybe it's not be the best decision, but at least we have a decision and we can plan. The second thing that I would say on that, let's involve our members early in the process. So there's still that fears, and I'm from Quebec. I went to the Commission Charbonneau. I've seen it all. But there's still that fear at the public owners level, at every level, feds, provinces, municipalities, a lot, where when they feel that when they talk to the industry, they often use the word collusion. They believe that if you talk to the industry, they will get an advantage on bidding on contracts. It's simply not the case. One good thing happened during COVID? I would never want to live COVID again. It was a nightmare. The point's not that. But during COVID, that situation forced us, industry, government, engineering, architect, all of us, to talk because we were often at home. We needed to make sure that we did the right thing in order to project to move forward. So why not just keep doing that? Let's have the discussion. Let's involve your member and my member really early in the process. And often I say to government, before you start the financing of the project or planning the money to build it, why not talking to us? We can assess risk, plan the risk, mitigate the risk, and we want to make sure that when the step 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this is where the new collaborative approach are very paying off right now, if we are in the room, you won't get these old projects where like super over cost, over budget, timing's wrong. So let's just talk.
Yeah, absolutely. These new collaborative models, progressive design build, integrated project delivery, alliancing. I think the secret sauce there is that before you take a wild guess at schedule and budget, you actually do the work first. And then collaboratively, you come up with a far more predictable schedule and budget, and everybody is in alignment. The P3s were supposed to have done that, and in some cases they perhaps did, but I think far too often with P3s is that we all brought old behaviors into the model.
That's correct. I think that there was an entire world built over to P3s. I'm not sure that's the future, but that being said, that's something we should have a look at it. But you're right, the new models at least bring a price to the risk. Because one of my pastors was always telling me, he said, you know what, Rod? Risk is a commodity, and somebody has to pay for it. So let's just make sure we're paying for the right risk.
Well, also, risk is something you inherently own depending on your role in the project, and I think that's something that people have lost sight of. What's really slowing down projects, though? I want to just sort of touch on this because there's a lot of pressure to build faster, put shovels in the ground and quickly, but sometimes that's it's counterintuitive. Maybe you don't want to get the shovel in the ground too soon until you've done some of the base work.
Yeah, I think first of all, that permitting process at every level takes time. We spend more time in Canada looking for permits than Azerbaijan. Okay, so this is how bad it is in Canada. I think all this, we all have to, and that's something I'm going to speak at the FCM because that's something we need to fix at every level. And I just want to raise an issue that people don't think about it. As we're planning to invest like multi-billion dollars at national defense, the federal government need to fix their security clearance program. Because right now, you cannot get your company clear, you cannot get your workforce cleared. And if they don't fix it, I'm telling you, John, all that money that is on the table is going to be at risk.
It's a secret. Perhaps not everything has to be secret clearance.
Exactly. So at one point, they need a full refresh of that program. I don't believe that the person cleaning the snow in front of the building needs to have top security clearance. We need to reassess that program. And mostly, I think PSPC at the federal level needs to take it seriously.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, and part of fixing approvals and permitting is also building the right capacity in the civil service and in public agencies. Not necessarily saying a bigger civil service, but we need the right skill sets, because if you don't have the subject matter expertise, you default to process, or you just take longer than you need. And what we're seeing from the government of delegating decisions, wouldn't the public and the minister have more confidence if they had subject matter experts they could rely on? So,
I totally agree on you. And sometimes when you don't have the expertise, you tend to shift the risk towards the contractor, and that's create problems.
Okay, we're going to risk people's confidence about being on schedule because we're running a little late. But I just if you could make one systematic change, one policy change, one thing that you could do with the stroke of a pen to make things better, to make projects happen faster, and to give both the politicians and the public confidence that projects can be executed and executed well.
You know what? I would remove at every level, at every public owner government, the low cost, low bid project approval. I think that has stopped innovation, stopped the fight to climate change, and that stopped the industry to innovate.
Agreed. And I'll just last comment on that is that even if you only have 10% price weighting, if you give the most marks to the lowest price, everyone's going to minimally interpret the scope of work. That's not what we want. What you want to do is empower your consultants and your contractors to have your back and have your interests at heart.
100% agree.
But anyways, we're all on the same side, us, the owners, the regulators, the governments that are setting the policy. Let's get it done.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
You've been listening to In Discussion with ACEC. If you found today's discussion valuable, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with colleagues and peers who care about the future of Canada's infrastructure and the consulting engineering sector. New episodes will be dropping soon that feature voices from government industry offering insights into the decisions shaping our communities and our economy. In Discussion with ACEC is proudly brought to you by the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies, championing expertise, collaboration, and smart infrastructure solutions that build a strong Canada. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you the next time.